Alrighty, so the first emotion index of 2025, as we are now 1 month into the season, and I think it's appropriate to finally do the first emotion index, looking at every single fan base and see how each of their fan base feel about their team 1 month into the new season. Some fan base will feel like it's been an amazing start to their start of the season. Some fan base will feel like it's been off to a good start and definitely met expectation. The third tier, of course, would be the mid kind of category where their fan base will feel like, yeah, it could definitely be better in terms of the start of the season, but it could also be a lot worse. The fourth tier is definitely the tier that each fan base doesn't want their team to be in the beginning of the season, which is not a great start to the season and not the start that we want. And then normally in the first emotion index of the season, I don't actually create the fifth tier, which is usually the panic tier. However, I decided that, you know what, I'm gonna put this fifth tier in terms of the fact that we knew we were gonna suck this year. It's nothing special, and it's kind of the rebuilding, and also we knew we were going to be bad tier. And there are actually going to be some teams that I'm actually going to put there, and you probably already know which team I'm going to put there. And certainly, if you're supporting certain team, you probably already know before I even put each of these 30 teams in the emotion index that yeah, they definitely belong in that category. But with that being said, let us begin, and we're gonna go alphabetically order, starting with Atlanta United. And I'm gonna put them right here. And I'll tell you what, if it wasn't for that 4-3 win against NYCFC, I would have put him right here where, yeah, it has just been a very mediocre start for Atlanta United, and that I'm pretty sure their fan base, obviously, with all the expectation heading into this season, especially how much they spend on the attack, you would expect this team should be better. But unfortunately, as we have seen in the past, when teams spend heavily on the attack, they kind of sometimes forgot about the defense, and that's kind of been the problem for Atlanta United this season. They have had a tough time in terms of trying to keep the ball out of their net. In fact, the two win that they have so far this season, both of those games they conceded more than two goals, and even in the game against NYCFC, you saw the defensive mistake that they caused themselves, and it's not the first time that we've seen it this season as well. So, well, obviously, it was a big win for Atlanta to get themselves some confidence because they were definitely in a bit of a rough patch prior to that. In fact, they were winless before them winning the first game of the season against Montreal prior to that NYCFC comeback win. Yeah, it's definitely a very underwhelming start for Atlanta United fans, and some of them might be a little bit concerned. The fact that, oh boy, this is going to be like similar to what we saw last year, where all the money that they of course spend and all the talent that they have, they just can't get it right. And as I said, this season it's been the defense that's been a huge issue for this team. And then we go to Austin. Yeah, Austin is definitely going to be here. It's been an amazing start for Nico Esteves' team, and this is a prime example of what happened when a new coach booth can boost his team. And while Atlanta has had their issue in terms of defensively, the issue for Austin is kind of the opposite, where goal scoring is definitely a bit of an issue for this team. I mean, they're getting a lot of 1-0 wins and so forth. But if there's one thing I will say, especially in this game, is that you rather have a scoring problem, but you have a good defense, than the other way around. Because more times or not, when we see teams that have maybe some issue when it comes to the goal scoring department, but at least they're very defensively sharp and very locked down, they usually still are able to get resort there, and that's kind of what it is for Austin FC. And while yes, I know some Austin fans might not like the way that Nico Estevez kind of gone a little bit too defensive with this team. The bottom line is, I can understand why he decided to do that. Consider this team the last couple of seasons they have leaked goals left and right, and with the structure that he put, it's definitely making this defense much more locked down than previous season. Now, obviously, if they can just figure out the attack, and especially figure out, similar to what I said about Atlanta, while Atlanta attack has been okay this season, their attack also hasn't really generated as much as you would expect with the 50 plus million that they of course had. I mean, besides Latte Laugh, some of those attacking pieces where Atlanta has been disappointing. And the same goes with Austin FC as well. Brandon Vasquez only one goal to start the season, still haven't really quite hit the ground running, and even their other DP signing Uzuni just scored his first goal last week against St. Louis after he also had a really slow start to the season. So they can figure out the attack, then things should definitely go well for this Austin team. But nevertheless, when you look at where they are in the standings, I think Austin fans will be very happy with how they start and them being second in the standings. And then we look at Charlotte. I'm still gonna say it's a good start for Charlotte, and this is even after the loss that they had against the Colorado Rapids, which you argue that was probably one of their worst performance, if not the worst performance this season under Dean Smith. Though it was kind of expected when you see a Charlotte team that is a very defensive kind of team and a team that needs to use a lot of energy and discipline to stay defensively as they have done throughout the season and last season as well. You knew it was probably not going to work, especially against Caro, especially against a team playing in altitude. But still, I think Dean Smith's side has been really good this season. Obviously, I think the one concern I will say with this team is kind of what we've seen in previous year, where the attack is still kind of a little bit lackluster, and especially when it comes to new signing that haven't lived up to its billing. Yeah, Wilfred Zaha has definitely not lived up to its billing in the beginning of the season, but maybe that's just him trying to figure out this new league. As I usually always say about players that come into the league, it takes time for them to adjust. But that's kind of what Charlotte fans are hoping that is the case. Because besides that, and it's kind of the same thing. They've been pretty good at least on the defensive department for the most part. That is, they're I wouldn't say they're as good as they were last year in the beginning of the season, but still one of the better teams in terms of that. And as I said, in terms of goal scoring, they have found some goal scoring contribution throughout as well. They do just enough to still for me considered to be one of the more dangerous team in the Eastern Conference. And then we look at Chicago. So for the Fire, I'm gonna put them kind of right here. I want to say it's been an amazing start for the Chicago Fire, but at the same time, kind of putting it right around here, where there's no doubt it's a good start for this team. Obviously, the one thing I would say about the Chicago Fire is that for this season, there's no doubt that they belong in this category of their fans really thinking that maybe this might be different because we usually are always start off slow to the season. The cycle of the Chicago Fire with them starting off slow, then getting hot in the summer before just kind of going for their usual collapse in September. Well, it hasn't really kind of happened with Greg Berhalter team. I mean, Greg Berhalter has done a really good job figuring things out, and one of the more impressive thing is that they've been able to do it on the road this season. I mean, all three games that they play, or well, four games that they play on the road, they won three out of the four games, and the one game that they lost, they probably should have won that game if they didn't just decided to do the old Fire narrative of somehow be the better team, but somehow find boneheaded ways to give up goals to the Columbus Crew and lose that game. But otherwise, there's no doubt that this Fire team is much better compared to what we've seen in previous season. And Greg Berhalter is definitely cooking a good one in Chicago. And there's no doubt that maybe, just maybe, with this good start that they had, this might be finally the year that Fire fans can say that they're back in the playoffs for the first time since 2017 and finally end the longest active playoff drought in MLS right now. Then we look at FC Cincinnati. I would say right here, and that's again mainly due to their previous resort against Nashville. I think that resort was pretty big for them because have they not got that resort, and even if they get a draw out of that resort, I would have easily put them right here where it's could be better and could be worse. I mean, it's been a bit of a mediocre start for this FC Cincinnati side. You can clearly see that things are just kind of haven't really click on all cylinder for this team yet. And what is kind of concerned is the fact that they haven't really got some big win against some big team besides the Nashville Resort. I think that's kind of the biggest victory that they had. And for a team that they know they can beat the bad team in the Eastern Conference, but if you can't beat some of the better team in the Eastern Conference, especially teams that you might be facing in the playoffs, that could be a concern for Pat Nome inside. And again, this team it's been kind of all over the place. It's been kind of inconsistent where there's some games where they look really bad on the defense apart, but then there's also some games where they just don't look very good on the attacking end as well. I mean, but when you look at this attacking side, obviously the big signing Kevin Cave, he was decent at least in the beginning of the season, but he's definitely massively cooled off in the last couple of games as well, at least from open play that is. But still, for Cincinnati, they're still pretty respectable where they are in the standings. There's no doubt that I think they'll figure things out. This team always kind of get off to a bit of a slow start in the season where they can't really quite figure it out, especially on the attacking side of play. But given time, maybe they can figure that out and get themselves higher in the standings than where they are right now. And then we look at Colorado. Yeah, the Rapids are definitely off to a good start, and that game against Charlotte, I think that's a statement win for Colorado, and definitely a win that shows that yeah, they're not a one trick pony as some people say that they kind of are, and that they've been heavily been very fortunate that Zach Steffen kind of returned to his old form, making big save after big save. And while yes, they did had that poor performance against the Portland Timbers, which was easily their worst performance of the season, Chris Armas has done a really good job in terms of continue to build a very decent team and a team that I think could definitely be right up there in terms of not only being in the playoffs, but maybe can push themselves even closer in the conversation of being in the top four spot as well. And then we look at Columbus. For Columbus, I think it's still a good start for this team, even though I know Crew fans are very frustrated in terms of the lack of goal scoring product. I mean, we knew this was going to happen with this Columbus Crew team. As much as Wilfred Nancy can work all his magic and get the best out of this team, it's gonna be still hard to try to reproduce in terms of the product that Cucho Hernandez left in this team. But despite that, one thing I will say about Columbus, and I think I probably should put Columbus next to Austin, is the fact that they kind of follow the same formula where while they have had issue in terms of the goal scoring throughout the season, they have done enough in terms of the goal scoring to be able to win games, and that's mainly because their defense has been absolutely locked down this season, and that's again all credit to Wilfred Nancy, which is something that we thought that was going to be a weakness for the Crew, as they at least in the latter part of last season when you saw the defensive vulnerability of this team, but this season they have been really locked down for most part of the games, and the other thing that is impressive with Columbus is that despite the fact that they are definitely lacking that goal scoring prowess, they still haven't lost a game so far this season. They're still unbeaten and right up there in terms of one of the better team in the Eastern Conference. Even though we know this team can definitely be better, especially once they do make the right signing and find the decent replacement for Cucho Hernandez. Columbus might be back to being the team to beat alongside with Inter Miami in the Eastern Conference. And then we look at DC United. Yeah, it's not the start that we wanted. I mean, I kind of want to put them right here where we knew that they were going to be bad because again when you look at the team that they built this off season. In fact, you know what, I'm gonna actually put them right here. I'm actually gonna put them in the fifth tier where we kind of knew that they were going to be bad because again with the signings that they made this off season that has been relatively underwhelming and not really too much improvement with this team. We knew this team was going to be bad, and while in the beginning of the season they got off to an okay start to the season. That's kind of the thing we've seen with DC in the past, and I think DC fans have kind of warned people that yeah, this good start that we've seen in the past, it can turn south relatively quickly, and yeah, it definitely has turned south quickly for this team, and it's no surprise that when you have a team that had a relatively easy start to the schedule and still dropping points left and right like that, there's that concern, the fact that what happened when they do play against real team, and in the last couple of games they definitely have played against some really tough teams, and guess what happened? They lost both of those games. So yeah, for DC, I think they kind of belong in that category of they're not really kind of rebuilding. It's kind of a weird situation that DC are found themselves in. But it's also a situation where I think everybody kind of knew, including DC fans, knew that they were going to be bad because with the lack of signing, and that once again they hope that Benteke will just kick and drag this team to the playoffs and hope that that's going to be the case. Yeah, we knew they were going to be bad this season. And then we look at FC Dallas. Yeah, I'm gonna put Dallas here, where again, for Dallas, this is a definition of a team that I think in the beginning of the season it's a mid tier kind of team, and I think their fans don't knows it too. What's kind of frustrating for Dallas fans is that this team has been very inconsistent this year. There's been times where they have played relatively well, and then there's times where they look absolutely awful, especially on the attacking end, and that should not happen. I mean, when you look at them hiring Peter Will was which was supposed to be attacking minded kind of coach. They should not have some of these games where they look absolutely lackluster in front of goal, and especially when you have the likes of Lucho Acosta and Pedro Musa. And to be fair, well, both of those players has definitely had a great start to the season, but it just feels like even with both of those guys kind of contributing, it's still not enough for out the season where the attack is definitely still not humming. And not to mention, the other thing that besides the attack kind of look a little lackluster at times, the defense has also looked lackluster at times too. I think it's safe to say that last season after the regression that they took on the defensive front, it doesn't seem like it has gone away with this team. They're still conceding goals at an alarming rate, and it's got to a point where again, this team just a definition of mid, just a definition of a team that if you're a fan of this team, you're happy that at least this team is still kind of finding themselves in a playoff position, but you're very frustrated at the fact that they've been so inconsistent, and that might be kind of be the case throughout the season for Dallas if they can't figure this out. Then we look at the Houston Dynamo. Yeah, I'm very tempted to put them that we knew they were going to be bad because of the incomplete roster that they had. But even with that, I'm still gonna put them right here where it's just not been a great start that we wanted. I mean, even with the incomplete roster, there's times where this team has shown the ability that they can definitely be better than what their record is. And the reason why I say that is that really when you look at these games that they have, what is the one of the main reason why the Houston Dynamo has been off to a bad start besides the the lack of signing to replace some of those guys that they missed this offseason. It's them just committing self-inflicted mistake. Like they're just committing so many self-inflicted mistake where if they can even just minus like half of that, heck, even in the first game of the season, if they did not make those self-inflicted mistake against Dallas, they would have won that game and would have had their first win of the season by them and not winless as it seems. So yeah, if you're a Dynamo fan, it's going to be very, very frustrated. Not just because of the lack of quality of the team and that they're definitely not doing so well right now in terms of trying to stay above water before those signings could be made in the summer transfer window. But just these self-inflicted mistakes, these kind of mistakes that you shouldn't be seeing with a Ben Olsen kind of team as what we saw in previous years happening and causing them games. Yeah, that's equally as frustrating as in terms of just not being good enough in terms of competing and also just not getting off to a good start. And then we look at Sporting KC. Yeah, they're also right here where it's not the start that we wanted. Again, I think some people might also put them. We knew we were going to be bad, but with the investment that they had on the attacking front, you would assume that maybe Sporting KC can still do well and expect maybe mirror some of the issue that they have on the defensive front. Nope. Instead, it's been kind of the same old, same old. And now with the way we have now truly reached the end of the era with Peter Remise being dismissed on Monday, we'll see whether or not the new interim head coach can give the boost of this team because for a while now we have heard about Sporting KC fans have been pointing the finger toward Peter Remise in terms of really dragging this team to just such a low point to a point where yeah this team has the longest active winless run even going back to last year, but we'll see whether or not if they can end it. And as I even said in that video talk about winless team. They do have a pretty favorable schedule at least coming up, so maybe that could be a turnaround with this team, and maybe they can get themselves back on track. And then we look at the LA Galaxy. Yeah, it's not the start that we wanted. And again, it's the worst start that any defending MLS Cup champion has ever had. That's kind of says it all. And what Galaxy fans are very frustrated right now is the fact that I think they're once again blaming Greg Vanny, and that I think they're basically once again exposing him in terms of what happened when he does not have high intel and kind of bail him out. Now, granted, yes, that could be kind of the case, but at the end of the day, when you look at how injury riddled the Galaxy has been throughout the season, and not to mention that they have to pay the MLS Cup tax with them have to sell players left and right just to get under the cap. We knew that this was going to be probably going to be a rough start to the season. I didn't imagine as bad as this is with them being winless for so long. And I think the last game is just kind of almost a microcosm of this season, where in the last game against Orlando, they absolutely should have won that game. Like they should have got their first win of the season in that game. For 75 minutes, they were completely in control of the game, and then just a lapse of concentration on the defensive end, and then not to mention John McCarthy making another goalkeeping gaff, which is another reason why this team is currently where they are right now, where there's definitely a big goalkeeping problem right now with the Galaxy, with either of their starting goalkeeper not playing up to par. And that's what you got right now in terms of where the Galaxy are being one of the winless team, and as I said, off to the worst start that any MLS Cup champion from the previous season has ever had in MLS history. And then talking about their inner city rival, LAFC, well, it's not really any better for LAFC either. Again, for LAFC, just like Dallas, it's kind of very frustrating because there's no doubt that when you look at the talent that this team has had, this team should definitely be better than they are right now. Now, granted, yes, I think you can also argue that the reason why maybe LAFC is kind of off to a mediocre start is because with the way that they once again reshaped that midfield, you knew it was going to take time before things were going to go well. But we've seen in the past where when LAFC, even though they reshaped their midfield, it still worked out to a treat. But really, I don't think the midfield is the big issue of this team. The big issue of this team is definitely on the attacking end, and I think this is no surprise that just like what I said about the Columbus Crew, when you basically they sold one of your biggest usually in terms of the goal scoring in Matt Boguch this off season for a huge amount of money. There's no surprise that there's definitely that struggle, and especially the fact that Denis Bouanga definitely haven't got off to a great start of the season. It feels like it's similar to last season where it's once again another slow start for him, and I think LAFC fans are hoping that eventually he will get things going, though it's not going to be easy when he's being double teamed pretty much almost every single game. And then of course, the other issue I would say about LAFC is the fact that this team looks like a very one-dimensional team. Where the fact that we know they're a very great transitional kind of team, but what happened when teams are not going to let them hit on the transition? That's when you see the big issue with this LAFC team, just not able to find that second ability like we've seen in previous season, and as a result, you have kind of where they are right now, which is just a very mediocre team and a team that definitely should be playing better than what they are right now. And then we look at Minnesota. This is a tough one. I'm gonna put them right here, where I'm gonna definitely point the category of could be better because we know that this Minnesota team should be way better than what their record stat suggests. And even though I know they're still in a pretty good position right now, I'm just so frustrated the fact that this team should absolutely be right now tied with the Vancouver Whitecaps in the top position. If not, I think if I remember the points total, I think they should be overtaking that spot. No, actually, they would be tied with them because I reiterate what I said about those 4 points that was lost against Sporting KC and the Galaxy. Those two games, has just really drives me nuts because those two games are games that we've seen in the past under Adrian Heath losing those games that they clearly should have won. I would say the Sporting KC one drives me the most mad out of the two. If you ask me which one drives me the most mad, because that was a game against a team that literally is one the worst team in the league to start the season, a team that has pretty much gave up, and the fact that they just completely self imploded like that in the second half. Again, it just feels like there's no doubt that they're playing well, and there's no doubt that I think they're going to be one of the better team in the Western Conference, and it's good the fact that at least they finally showed some progress in the last game against RSL of how to actually close out games. But I am still very concerned about the inability to close out game, and I also am a little concerned the fact that while yes the way that Eric Ramsey style has played a team that is kind of similar to LAFC where they rely on the transition a lot and rely on the direct ball. What I am still a little concerned is the fact that yes they want to play that style, but what happened when teams try to force them to have all the possession? How is that going going to work out for this team. And not to mention, there's been multiple times I've seen this team go through row heave mode and just kind of simply stop attacking and try to see out so they can get a win. And usually that does not work well for this Loons team. And also that's kind of what you got what you got in terms of those two games that they choked away that should have never happened because they decided to go row heave mode. Eric Ramsey can't readjust, and next thing they choke away those lead, and if it wasn't for that, they would be right now tied with first place in the Western Conference with the Vancouver Whitecaps. Then we look at Montreal. Yeah, it's definitely not the start that we want, but there are definitely some hope if you're a Montreal fan, especially one. This 7 game road trip is about to come to an end. We knew this was going to be a murderous road to begin, and there will still definitely be the discussion of whether or not if the firing of Laurent Courtois was the right choice or not. Some Montreal fans that said that it was kind of the right choice because with the way that I've have heard that he has changed a lot of the formation and also playing players that is not in the right position. That is kind of the reason why things haven't gone so well. But I will say that 5 games into the season, especially with the lack of investment that he's been giving, I mean, I also still kind of think that it was kind of harsh for him to be dismissed after 5 games. But again, this is a team owned by Joey Saputo, one of the most ruthless kind of owner in terms of firing head coach left and right. I mean, it's hard to believe, but this Montreal team have still not had a head coach that have coached this team for more than 3 seasons in their existence. It's this is not nothing new for this team. This has been a thing where we've seen from day one the head coaching turnover of this team has just been absolutely sky high, and it hasn't really resort to, to them doing that well throughout their time in MLS as well. Sure, yes, they have had a couple of success stories, but for the most part, it's been kind of mediocre. Though again, I think things are going to be better, especially again with the way that they are going to be able to return home after this 7 game road trip. I mean, this upcoming game against Columbus is the last game of the 7 game road trip, and the way that in that game against Chicago, they definitely look promising. And I don't know if that's has anything to do with the new interim head coach boost. That's kind of the reason why they started to play much better. There is maybe some light at the end of the tunnel for Montreal, and maybe that first win is not going to be that long. Uh, in this in these upcoming games. And then we look at Nashville. So for Nashville fans, I think they'll be happy in terms of where they start this season. Yes, the last game against FC Cincinnati that was frustrating, and I think Nashville fans will feel like they should have deserved to get a point out of that game because I thought they played relatively well in that one. They just didn't make those defensive mistake late in the game, giving up a penalty, and then not to mention converted penalty on their own as well. That's has been a problem for this Nashville team. They have missed a lot of penalty. I think they have missed the most penalty out of any team right now, and they just cannot quite get it right in terms of the player from the spot. I mean, usually it's Hani Mukhtar the one that can convert those penalty, but he's been really struggling, and even some of the alternative like Sam Surge taking a penalty in one of the game, and he still missed from the spot as well. So there's no doubt that that's kind of the frustrating thing with this team. But other than that, I think Nashville fans should be happy with the way that, as I said before, it feels like not only BJ Callahan has finally uh, got the started to get his philosophy to this team, and they're started to shift away from the Gary Smith style of play and started becoming a more possession kind of team and a team that actually can play some beautiful full soccer, which is something you would never expect from a Gary Smith kind of team. They're also winning games as well to a point where yeah they're definitely in a much better place, and it feels like we're finally starting a new era of soccer for this national team to get themselves back to where they were in the first couple of seasons of regularly being a playoff contender. And then we look at the New England Revolution. Yeah, their definition of we knew that they were going to be bad. And the reason why I say that isn't because of the fact that with all the signings that they have made it won't turn out to do well. But with so many signings that they have made and them kind of almost being an expansion team with all the signings, yeah, you knew that they were going to be bad because for the most part, a lot of expansion team when they made a lot of signings and putting the squad for a new squad from the beginning, it usually doesn't work well. Now, obviously, San Diego and St. Louis fans would want to have a word with me on that, but historically, expansion team has always get off a slow start. What we've seen from San Diego and St. Louis has been kind of just completely out of the anomaly. But that being said, it also doesn't help the fact that Caleb Porter is still the head coach of this team. And after the dismissal of Peter Ramirez, I would not be surprised if Caleb Porter could be the next on the chopping block. Obviously, that pressure kind of relieved him a little bit after them getting their first win of the season, and we'll see whether or not if they can get on a roll on that. Because if they don't get on a roll, that you got to say Caleb Porter is probably the next to be fired, especially as I mentioned, the two head coaches that I thought might be the first to be fired, Peter Ramirez and Caleb Porter. Well, Ramirez is now gone, so I'm pretty sure it won't be long before Caleb Porter might get the axe if he can't continue to get this team off to this disastrous start that they had this season. And then we look at the New York Red Bulls. So yeah, the Red Bulls is kind of like right here. And obviously there are definitely some frustration for Red Bulls fans in terms of how this team has played, where it's been a very inconsistent kind of start to the season. Yes, there's times where they have played relatively well, especially at home this season. They've done mostly well at home. The road form has been a different story. The road form has been absolutely dreadful this season for the Red Bulls, and that's kind of interesting because they have been a good road team for the past couple of years, especially last year under Sanjo Schwartz. I mean, if you forget that when they went to MLS Cup, they have to win a couple of road games to actually got to that point. But yeah, overall, it's been kind of an inconsistent start to the season. Part of that is mainly due to the fact that their defense definitely not been as good as what we seen last year, and then also the attacking end still hasn't really quite hit stride. Like we talk about that front three as well, or shall I say front two, because I think Lewis Morgan is currently injured right now. I haven't seen him feature this team in the last couple of games, but Email Frostberg and Trupo Moldings has been okay this season. But if they want to be a decent team, they can't have those guys to be okay. They need those guys to really kind of carry the team on the attacking end, and they for the most part hasn't really quite do so in a consistent basis. And then look at their inner city rival, NYCFC. It's kind of the same spot. And again, I can just carbon and copy what I said about the Red Bulls, and it will be the same thing for NYCFC, and it's kind of the same thing that NYCFC fans can say about their team and how they're so frustrated with the inconsistency, especially the role form that is. Again, the role form we saw last year, it was not great whatsoever. It's not great either this year as well, and I think that game against Atlanta, that's the icing on the cake of how bad they've been on the road. Even when it looked like things were going to go well for them, they just simply collapsed late in this game and losing in this one and draw more frustration to NYCFC fans that feel like this team could show some more progress, especially these young players. Got a year under the belt. They should show some improvement, not the same regression that we saw last season as well. But still, they're still in a pretty good position where I would say that they could definitely be a lot worse. If it wasn't for those home win, they'll definitely be in a lot worse position, but there is no doubt that they should be much better than they are, and they got to figure out that role form situation. I'm pretty sure NYCFC fans are kind of getting tired of once again hearing the narrative of the fact that this team simply is doing well at home because they play in a baseball stadium, and once they do play on a real size pitch, yeah, that's when things start to become a problem for this team. And then looking at Orlando City, yeah, I think Orlando will be right here, where I think they're off to a good start. I will say about Orlando, they're kind of a team where if we're gonna play the a game called Pretender and Contender, I would say Orlando City will be in the Pretender category, and I think maybe some Orlando City fans can agree with that as well. Where I do think that this team is not as good as they shown in the beginning of the year. Yes, they have got some impressive resort, but most of these impressive resort is against bad teams and teams that are near the bottom of the standings, and especially in that game against the Galaxy, which I think that was probably the most impressive win that they had. You gotta also remember that game for 75 minutes. They didn't do nothing. They looked like they were on their way of losing that one. And if it wasn't for a very fortuitously penalty that was given to them, and then also John McCarthy just having an absolute howler, they probably would have lost that game as well. But still, the points doesn't lie for Oscar Pereira team. They're definitely off to a good start in the standings, and I think their fans will be happy about that, especially on the attacking end as well. I think their fans will be happy the fact that this guy called Marco Pasalic, yeah, he's definitely very good, and no doubt that there's early signs that he is a perfect replacement for Facu Torres. They lost this off season. And then we look at the Philadelphia Union. Yeah, it is still going to be right up here, where it's an amazing start for the Philadelphia Union, and that's even with the loss against Inter Miami. I mean, in that game against Inter Miami, I think they play relatively well in that loss. Yeah, yeah, yes, they weren't able to find that second goal, but for the most part, they definitely generate the chances and able to outscore Inter Miami in the expectancy goal rate. If they would have been a little bit more clinical in that game, which is literally the thing that you absolutely need to do if you're going to have any chance of getting points against Inter Miami, they probably would have got a point out of that game. But overall, Bradley Cornell's side has done a really good job throughout this season. The goal scoring is definitely back for this team, especially the front three has definitely looked lethal. And then on the defensive side, yes, there have been some defensive problem at time this season, but for the most part, it's been much more solid. Especially, it's not a big surprise that is the case when Andre Blake is back in goal, and it seems like he's started to be back to his best this season as well. And then we look at the Portland Timbers. Just simply going to put them right here, mainly because the last couple of games things have definitely gone well for the Portland Timbers, with them getting back to back win. But if it wasn't for those two games, I would say they kind of belong right around this category where it was a miserable start for this team. And again, I will warn a lot of Timbers fans, and I'm pretty sure Miami fans will warn Timbers fans about this. The fact that we've seen this before with Phil Neville team, where when things are going well, things are going well. But when things are not going well, as soon as they lose a game, then the losing streak is going to follow. We'll see whether or not if that is going to be the case, because while they're on the winning way right now, maybe win a couple of games in a row, we'll see whether or not if they can keep that consistency before, if they do suffer their first loss, or in the near future, that maybe things would go wrong, because that's kind of the story with Phil Neville team in general, and we kind of saw that last season as well, where when things are going well for the Timbers, yeah, things are definitely going well, but when things are definitely not going well for the Timbers, as soon as they had that long winning streak or unbeaten streak come to an end, that's where it really dries up. So we'll see whether or not if that is the case. And the other thing I will say about the Timbers that's still a big concern, the defense. The defense is still a big concern with this team. The attack has definitely mirrored that issue, but the defense, it still is a big wolf for the most part this season. And then we look at RSL. Yeah, RSL is definitely right here. It's definitely not the start that they wanted, and again, part of that is not a big surprise considering that when you look at some of the sales that they had this offseason, selling some of their best goal scored and not really replacing too much of it, and especially some of their summer signings once again have not achieved to the height that they are. Yeah, that's where you get a mediocre team like RSL this season, and I think the lack of nine position, I know that's obviously the big talking point. I think RSL fans have said that the reason why they have been really struggling in terms of goal scoring is because they don't have a real number nine. To me, I don't think that's really the only issue with this team. I just think that this team at times is very dysfunctional on the ninth position. I think their attack, besides Diego Luna making magic, looks very one dimensional and looks stale at time. And then on the defensive front, man, at times the defensive front has been a big problem of this team. They've been very inconsistent. And if it wasn't for their goalkeeper Rafael Cabral, well, with multiple time bailing them out, this team would have conceded more goals than they should be, because that back line is not good whatsoever for this RSL team to start this season. And then we look at San Diego FC. Yeah, I mean, don't even need to mention too much about San Diego. I mean, their fans are absolutely ecstatic about the start of the season. Obviously, I think the only downside is they did not match St. Louis in terms of going for the first 5 games unbeaten, but I don't think their fans would care. I mean, they pretty much own Southern California right now, and maybe even own California once they play the San Jose Earthquakes a little bit later in the season. Everything is going well for this team. It's good vibes only for San Diego, and I'm pretty sure their fans are definitely enjoying life right now in their expansion season. But now looking at the San Jose Earthquakes, yeah, I think it's gonna be right here where it definitely could be better, but could definitely be a lot worse. And I'm kind of leaning more to the could be a lot worse category because again, one of my biggest issue with this team team is definitely being predicted in front of my eyes, where I was very concerned about the defense coming into this season. They didn't really make too much chance or make too many chances changes. I'm gonna say the right word there, but yeah, they didn't make too many changes in terms of that, or really upgrading that position. And Lord and behold, look what's happening in these early season. They have had some defensive issue throughout these last couple of games, especially during the losing streak as well. Yeah, they had some real defensive issue and had some real tough time in terms of keeping the ball out of the net. But I think the thing that I would also say that could be better um, category is the fact that the attack has actually done pretty well. I think besides the last game against the Sounders, where I argue that was probably the worst attacking display that they have shown this season, besides the game against Minnesota, the attack has actually done really well. They actually are underperforming when it comes to their XG, and they're creating a lot of chances, and at times being very unlucky, not being able to put away some of their chances. I mean, I think an example of that is the game against Colorado. If they didn't get Zach Steffen in that game, they probably would have got all 3 points in that one. So overall, consider how bad this team was last season, and me predicting that this team probably is not going to be as bad as last season, but definitely not going to be a playoff team. This is kind of where I expected the Quakes are be, and I think some Quakes fans can relate it to that. I mean, as much as Bruce Arena can work his magic, he can't really work his magic to its all when you can see this is a team that still lacks quality, and a team that I'm really hoping they make some upgrade in the summer transfer window. And that's saying a lot considering that this is not a team that is known to make some big signings either in the summer or winter transfer window to really upgrade the team. And then we look at Seattle. Yeah, Seattle's kind of in the same category of could be better and could be worse. You notice how I put a lot of team here because a lot of team are kind of in the same situation, especially team in the middle of the tier where things could be better and could be a lot worse. The could be a lot worse part would be the fact that at least the defense for the most part has hold up this season. Seattle is kind of having the same problem as I've seen last season with this team, where it just looks like a team that has looked very stale at time going forward in the attack. Now injuries have definitely played a big part of it this season. Losing Paul Arriola for the rest of the season, that has to hurt the Sounders, and also not having Jordan Morris in the last couple of games, that also kind of hurt the attack. But this is where if they want to show that they're actually very deep on the attack, they need to get things going. And especially, I think Sounders fans are kind of maybe starting to get a little frustrated in the Jesus Ferreira false night kind of experiment that Brian Schmitz seems to put. It just doesn't seem like it's working whatsoever, and it's no surprise that Jesus Ferreira has not really kind of reaped the reward because of that. And then we look at St. Louis. Yeah, it's kind of the same thing with Seattle, where it could be better and could be a lot worse. And it's again the same thing would say with St. Louis can be the same about Seattle. They have a very good defense, and there's no doubt that this team doesn't give up a lot of goal, and that's even when Roman Burke hasn't been healthy in the last couple of games. Their backup goalkeeper Ben Lund probably right now is the best backup goalkeeper I think in the league, and a guy that I wouldn't be surprised. There might be some teams that might be looking to try to get him, and maybe he might be thinking about getting some starting minutes. Consider how well he's been playing, stepping in for Roman Burki. But obviously, just like Seattle, the attack has been absolutely woeful in the beginning of the season. Now, just like Seattle, it could be because of injuries. They have lose a couple of pieces. They haven't had Cedric Toicher in the last couple of games. In the last game, they also didn't had their arguably their most influence creator in Edouard Leuven due to suspension. But still, a big part of the reason why this team has been really lackluster is just the tactics that Olaf Melberg play. Whatever the tactics that he's using, while it's done a good job in terms of the defensive department, it has not generate the same on the attacking moment. It just feels like it's very stale right now. And this was kind of the thing that I've also heard at least from Olaf Melberg former teams, where some of the fans of the teams that coach that he coached under plays this very similar style, and it just feels very inspiring whatsoever. And that's kind of what frustrates St. Louis fans a lot because it's one thing to be a boring kind of team, but if you're kind of a boring team and you're not picking points, that's when fans are starting to show some frustration. And there's no doubt that there are frustration right now with the lack of product that this attack has had, and definitely have not carried the fun brand of soccer that they play near the end of the season, and that good run of form in the second season into this season as well. And then we look at Toronto FC. Yeah, this is a definition of a team that we knew they were going to be bad. In fact, I think this team is probably the definition of the team that we knew that they were going to be bad and we're rebuilding. And remember in the beginning video, I talked about a team that is probably already going to be in that category. Yeah, it's definitely this TFC side. I don't really need to mention too much. We knew that they were going to be bad, and we knew that this is just going to be a see you next season mode in year one of this deep rebuild after probably the guy that helped them take a bit of a leap in the rebuild last year, and John Herman is no longer there, and I guess you could say that maybe they're just hoping eventually things will get a little bit better, and especially just counting on the days before they finally can get out of that Insigne and Benedeschi contract. I believe they have 2 more years left in that. I think 2026 is the last year of that contract. They cannot wait to get out of both of those guys' contract because those two track is going to go down as one of the worst contract in MLS history, and it's kind of one of the reasons why they're in this hell hole that they're in the same in the first place. And then we look at Vancouver. So unlike TFC, Vancouver is definitely in this position where it's been an amazing start. Now the last couple of games they have cooled off a little bit. After that perfect run to start, they haven't actually won a game ever since they lost their first game. And in the last game that they had against TFC, it was kind of a very uninspiring performance for Jasper Sorensen's side. Though you could argue they were kind of resting some guys for that big CONCACAF Champions Cup game that they had in the middle of the week against Pumas. But still, I don't think Vancouver fans can complain whatsoever. It's been an incredible start for this team, and a very unexpected start to this team as well. Because even though they've been battling for some injury, especially they're hoping Ryan Gaul can be back as soon as possible. They're still winning games and still getting some good result and persevere. Whatever Jasper Sorensen has done in terms of this team. He's a definition of a head coach that have absolutely got take advantage of this new head coach boost, and also just getting the best out of the squad that he has. And if he can continue to do that, like I said, I would not be surprised. He could be the front candidate right now for coach of the year this season. But there you have it. That is pretty much it in terms of looking at the emotion index. As always, let me know in the comments below what do you think of this video, and also let me know in the comments below if you think I rate some team a little bit too high in the emotion index or a little bit too low in the emotion index. But until then, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys next time.